For more on the financing of terrorists, I spoke to Thomas Sanderson. He's the co-director and senior fellow at the Transnational Threats Project at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. We asked him how the U.S. is approaching this issue.
Well, of course, the funding makes these operations possible, but our ability to interdict that funding flow is limited, and it does not take an awful lot of money to do this. And I don't expect that countering ISIS funding will bring an end to their external operations like this, but it'll certainly make an impact.
The White House has said a number of times in the past that one of the goals was to cut off the funding sources, including, for example, the black market for oil, that would help relieve the situation that the ISIS is getting all this extra revenue, and they're using that money to recruit more members, to buy more weapons, I assume, and to create more havoc in the area. Is that strategy working?
To some degree. It's impossible to target all the oil facilities simply because some of them are covert, but there is an additional problem, and that is ISIS recognizes that they have tied one of their funding sources, oil, to humanitarian needs. A lot of what they produce in terms of diesel fuel is used by internally displaced persons camps, refugee centers, schools, hospitals, and we are reluctant to cut off all of that oil supply and capability because we know it will engender a humanitarian crisis beyond even what we have now. And so that's real trouble for us.
So if we put you in charge to gather more intelligence, to perhaps start a new initiative, if you will, to stem the recruitment of ISIS members, what would that be?
Well, to get more intelligence, you have to put more guys on the ground who can develop the relationships with people who are moving in and out of ISIS territory. So it means putting our own intelligence service folks on the ground, more of our special operations forces on the ground in order to develop those intelligence networks.
Who does the U.S. rely on to get that intelligence that you're talking about?
Well, we do have friends in the region, and they are better friends when we are leading and when we are putting guys in harm's way. Again, I'm not advocating for major troop deployments here, but when we put more folks on the ground and work with them, then they are more willing to provide us with their own manpower and their own resources. Our friends are clearly Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and others who can put forces on the ground in certain areas, but will not do so unless we do the same thing. So that's part of the challenge here, is getting those folks to agree to put their own troops in harm's way.
At what point do we say enough is enough, and we have a bit of a Geneva Convention, so to speak, where we get all the countries involved in a room, we dice up and we divide up the areas of Syria and Iraq and the areas that are affected, and every country takes a particular part. We go in there with the assistance of the United Nations, and we have to have some stability, because this is not just about terrorism. This is a humanitarian crisis that we are facing.
Well, it's long been a humanitarian crisis with hundreds of thousands of people killed and half of Syria's population displaced. So at what point do we get to that point? Well, I think you need you would need more strikes outside of Syria on European territory, on American territory, and other places across the MENA, Middle East, North Africa region, inside of Russia, for all of us to really come together and say, all right, we need to go in with all of our resources and work with all the local partners to a maximum degree and destroy ISIS. And that is a very, very difficult strategy and concept to really conceive of. It's a long, long way from where we are now.
Is Europe at war with ISIS?
No, I wouldn't say that Europe is at war with ISIS. France clearly is on some level. And it doesn't matter if it's a socialist or a conservative, free market leader in power. If there's an attack like this on civilians in your country, you're going to battle the perpetrator. You're going to declare a war in some fashion and pursue them.
Is it possible that some of the refugees that are coming out, and I know this is an assumption by some, that if they are associated with ISIS, that they could perhaps gather funds or send money back home? Is that a realistic issue that we need to worry about?
Yes, that is possible, but excuse me, it is possible that these refugees could be sympathetic to ISIS and send money back home, but the more likely scenario here is that ISIS would send fighters into Europe through the refugee flows. They already have people there who can fight and attack in place, but getting new individuals, highly trained individuals, fighters into Europe is certainly a goal of theirs, and sending them through the same routes that refugees use is clearly a likely scenario here.
A lot of politicians out there, I won't name them, have indicated that they more or less would not be surprised if there was an attack on the U.S. mainland. And I'm wondering, how valid are those concerns?
It's a valid concern. It's impossible to tell you at what level that is a valid concern. We certainly have dozens, hundreds of individuals here who are in sympathetic, or who are sympathetic to ISIS, who have sought to go to the battlefield to join ISIS, who have heard the call by ISIS spokesman Adani to kill them where they are or attack in place, as he said in September of 2014. Those are individuals who are in a country where you do have easy access to weapons and the materials you can use to build a bomb. So yeah, the threat is here for sure.